Okay, so I'm so excited today. I have Candace Fiscus and Kara Rains on with me. And not only are these two women that I'm inspired by, but they're also two women that I've known since I was a kid, right? Kara and I met in
Right.
fourth grade, and Can and I met in high school, and the rest is history. And now we're
Yep.
all three business women working in the fields, trying to do it right. And that choice is super hard to
It
make.
is very hard.
It
You're
has
right.
been
Definitely
challenging.
the road that is more challenging.
Yes.
My husband got me.
But also more rewarding at times.
Okay, so Candace, why don't you tell us a little bit about what you do?
So I am a insurance agent. I specialize in all things business owners need, such as workman's comp, building insurance. I do employment practices and all business management insurance. So I do not insure people, but I insure things.
And what about you, Kara?
I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist. I work with a group practice and also have my own private practice. So I see about 10 to 15 clients a week. Been doing it for over 10 years. It's going
And
really
you
well.
just started a specialty in.
I did. I am trained in EMDR, and that stands for eye movement desensitization reprocessing. It's
And
a
yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say it's a treatment model that's been around actually since the late 80s, but it's just now really starting to gain momentum in the field.
It's great. I've done it a couple of times. And I think as part of my self-care, it's really great for going back to old traumas and releasing those traumas, which sometimes talk therapy just isn't able to access that for you.
That's
So
right.
I will talk a lot about the self-care journey I've been on for the past several years in this podcast. So EMDR has just played a big part in that. So I think it's super cool that that's what you're doing. Okay, so that's what you do for work, but what's home life like?
Ah!
I'll let you take that one.
All right, I'll take the lead on this. So I have to preface by saying I have a 5.5-year-old and a 3.5-year-old. My 3.5-year-old is, both of my kids are wonderful. My 5.5-year-old is a little girl, Presley, sweetheart, very compliant, very helpful. Sonny, my 3.5-year-old, is a little more challenging. He's very sweet boy. He's high energy, so he's demanding in multiple ways. But home life it can be very chaotic at times, but I'm just moving through it. I'm just kind of along for the ride.
You have to really balance out your days because you don't have someone helping you. So when you see clients and when you don't, that's like a whole other job in itself, is arranging that aspect
You're
of your,
so
especially
right.
if your husband's hours are not typical working
Yeah.
hours.
That's right. And it's funny you mention that, because that's a conversation that my husband and I often have. Is a significant amount of the stress and overwhelm comes from just coordinating childcare, just that.
Yeah.
And I do have some help with family, but it's a lot. It's a lot of, it's like looking at the calendar and how can I plug everything in, and well, when can I do it? And then that client cancels and wants to reschedule. And then but we make it work.
Yeah, it's a lot though. I think as moms, a huge stress is just keeping that ball in the air and making sure everybody's where they need to be when they need to be there, and not being left alone or being able to get to their activities. And
Right.
that, while you're building a practice or having clients contact you all the time, to answer questions, like, and then you have this whole other piece. It's a lot. It's really a lot to send a woman into kind of like insanity for,
Yeah.
moments
Yeah.
of time, and let us like lose our mind. What about you, Can?
Right.
So, my home life it's great. I feel like I'm in a good spot right now, but it hasn't always been that way. As you ladies know, I am a single solo parent, So I have one child, she's 8 years old, just started 3rd grade. And it's challenging at times, we're just coming off of a couple days of being sick. So I feel like I have a newborn baby again, and I'm up, you know, multiple times a night.
No
And
one to
it's challenging at times.
come in and
What's
help.
that?
No switching
Yeah,
off for someone else.
no switching off there. And I've been doing this since she was 6 months old. So that part's been challenging, but I feel like we're in a good spot now, having her in school and activities. It's challenging to be everywhere. I'm trying to be present for her and be at every activity that I can, volunteer at her school. But during the day when she's at school, that's when I really tackle my work. But like you said, the phone never rests. I get emails at 9 o'clock at night, sometimes at 1 in the morning. I'll
Yeah.
wake up at 6 and say, who is working at 1 in the morning? Well, business owners do.
Business
So I
owners
oftentimes
do.
have to address, yes. I mean,
And
there's
when
people
they're
like us
contacting
too.
you, it's probably a pressing matter and they're feeling pretty stressed out. So your prompt
Yeah.
responses help you keep your clients and grow your client base.
Yes. I'd say about 80% of my emails come from my mobile phone, where I'm literally responding from a cell phone.
Yeah.
But that's the beauty in being an independent contractor and working for yourself is you do have that flexibility, but it is a double-edged sword.
So what's the other side of it besides just being contacted at all
The
hours?
the other side of it is that you can, like Kara was saying, create the flexibility. You plug things in so that you can be present where you need to be.
No, I know
It's
that it's a double-edged sword. So I'm saying like you get the flexibility, you're able to show
right.
up when you want to, but what's the downside to that? Because right now that's like, well, why don't we all do that? Because that sounds wonderful to pick up my kid at 2:30 and look like I'm a mom that's just available all the time because I'm there at drop off and pick up. But like, what are you doing on the back end? What are you sacrificing in other areas in order to make that happen for her?
Well, I kind of have an analogy for this. Do you guys ever get those notifications from Outlook or your email that says your email inbox is full and you can't get any more emails? That's the downside. That's how I feel sometimes, where at the end of the day, I'm literally like, I cannot take any more information. I cannot take any more. And I get to a place where I feel like I'm ready to combust a little.
Yeah.
So I think that's the downside.
Yeah. For me, it's when I walk in a house and there's stuff's all over the kitchen table or the kitchen's still a mess. For some reason, the kitchen's like my biggest trigger. And I think it's just because like where we spend the most of our time and I can't close that door. But when
Right.
I'm at my, end of like hearing what people need from me and my to-do list at work and what reports I have to be written or whatever. And then I come in and there's a mess. I may have been known to like cross over to the dark side in those moments. Or when you walk in and they just are fine and then your kids turn into whining mode because they can whine to you and you're like, I'm emotionally drained. So unless you have something else to talk to me about, I don't want to know what your brother just
Speaking of analogies, Candace, I love that analogy. I'm going to offer another one, and I learned this from a friend. It's almost as though at times, and I imagine that a lot of people, women especially, can relate. It is as if we have multiple tabs open. It's like having a bunch of tabs open. And I don't know if you guys can relate to this, but I feel like I'm often in a state of like buffering where I'm just kind of like waiting for it to catch up. And so, it becomes, we have to look at, okay, how can we close out some of these tabs? And there's a lot that
I'm sorry, I am buffering right now. You're
buffering. We'll give you a minute.
I love that. So Ben said to me the other day, you're like my cloud. I just put in all the information that I need to remember or whatever our weekend activities are. And then when I need it, I can just pull it out. And I was like, I don't want to be your cloud. Being my own cloud is
you are your own cloud. You don't need to
that in itself is so much. So speaking, he also heard like the difference between a man's brain and a woman's brain is a woman's brain has like wires, right? And they're just like
Yes.
running in every direction. We're thinking of all these things. And a man's brain has boxes. And when they're in a box, Ben told me this analogy, so I'm not making this up. He heard it and he thought it was a good description. He said, when they're in a box, that's their box. That's what they're thinking about. But he said, sometimes when I'm trying to like relay things to him, I start in this box and then I jump to this box and then I jump back to this box. And he's like, I can't do that. Like, you need to tackle one box at a time, or I'm not going to be soaking in the information you want me to. And then he said, men have a nothing box where they're literally able to just be in nothing. And I don't think I've ever been in nothing. Like,
No,
I even listen to guided meditations because in the complete silence, I struggle more. So I'm like slowly working on that silence part. But a big part of learning to go into that kind of state was like verbal meditations, because my brain, it's just always going.
Overload.
Overload for sure.
yeah, I think it's part of being a mom, honestly. It's just part of being a mom. We're always on. Even I was explaining this to my boyfriend the other day. I feel like even when my daughter's not home, you know, I'll have a 24-hour period where I don't see her. It's usually not more than that. I still feel like I'm actively a parent at that time because you still care. You're not just turning anything off. As a mom, you're always on.
Right.
And I envy the fact that men seem to be able to compartmentalize more, but I actually read something recently. Don't ask me the source because I don't remember. I have too many tabs open in my brain, but it did say something about that we as women, there's a part in our brain that's regarding emotion and relationships. It's actually bigger than men's. It's specifically geared towards relationship. Carrie, you're gonna have to look into that as a therapist.
I will, and I believe it.
Yeah. So we're made that way. We're made to be on and available.
To do it all.
But sometimes I don't want to be. Kara, so when so your husband travels too, right? So sometimes he's gone, and I know that you've had like back issues and chronic pain, which is debilitating when you're trying to sustain moving forward and taking care of everybody. So as a therapist, do you sometimes just come in and you're so overwhelmed and then you have to be fully present for what somebody else is experiencing and going through? How's that? Because then you really have to push you and your family, like, or can you just do both?
I mean, that's a really good question. I can typically compartmentalize. I can typically sort of set aside my own stuff. And I can only really think of maybe a handful of instances when coming in, you know, starting off a session, I had something really, really big. I guess I've sort of become habituated. I've habituated to the tabs, right? And so in any given day, there's a lot going on. But in terms of it being, you know, there being an actual stressor, like something new and something that I need, it's only been just a handful of times. But yes, it does require, you know, being a therapist requires you do set aside your own stuff. You have to be fully present and you know, right there. You have to be able to meet the client where they're at. You can't tune out. You can't tune out for the whole 50 minutes. You have to hear everything. You have to be able to be present fully.
Yeah. Which for me is so great that you do that, because I think when we're all out to dinner, sometimes you do tune out. And I love that. I mean, we all do, but Kara, we've had some great moments over the years. Kara,
we sure have.
And I love though that when you turn on that hat, you're just like, I've asked Kara so many times to be my therapist because her way of like talking me through whatever problem I'm going through it just makes so much sense, and she hits on just the right point, but a little close to home for
Yeah, a
I
bit of a
mean,
dual relationship ethical issue there,
I'll
but
just call you on the phone and get free therapy.
don't call it therapy.
you know
We're
what's
just
great
talking.
is
Just kidding.
when you're having relationship issues, you can oftentimes quote Kara and say, well, Kara said this and she's the therapist. I asked Kara and Kara said,
Right.
This
It's sort of like it validates your side. If you can reference a therapist, it's great.
you are my second therapist. You're just,
So
I
does
just
it work? Does it help you in the argument?
absolutely. There's validity there. When a therapist can back you up, there's validity there.
For sure. So you said Kara's your second therapist. So do you go to therapy?
I do. I've been in and out of it pretty much my whole adult life. I love therapy.
I love therapy. Some
I
massage
see no
for the
shame
brain.
in it. I've done relationship therapy. I've done it all. I see no shame in it. I've even seen a therapist over parenting. Seen a
Oh
child.
yeah, I think therapy, just everyone should experience it. Everyone should be a part of it. I think self-reflection is the most
Mhm.
important quality to have in order to grow in any aspect of your life. And
Absolutely.
you either have amazing discipline and self-perspective to do that for yourself, or you have to go to a therapist.
Right. Well, we
Have to
all
have
have
someone to
blind
talk to.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you have
Candace
to
hit it on the head. We all have blind spots. She's absolutely right.
oh, and
And
yeah,
and I tell my clients, I say even therapists have therapists. Because I think there's a misconception,
right.
that certain people are exempt, certain people don't. No, even therapists have therapists.
Right.
In fact, as part of our a lot of the graduate programs for psychotherapy, if you're pursuing an MFT career, you are required to be in therapy. I was not. I went to Pepperdine. They didn't require it, but I'm currently seeing clients they're seeing me as part of that requirement.
That's
And
really cool.
I think it's great. We have to work through our stuff before we can show up for other people.
I think that's a really
Absolutely.
important thing. Even business coaches or coaches have coaches.
Yep.
Like you've never reached this
Or athletes.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Professional athletes have coaches. Professional athletes check in. It's part
Right.
of performance. That's what you do. So there's no
Right.
shame in it.
better
Mm-mm.
and good performance. Not everybody does this. And I think, there's been people in my life where self-reflection is really hard. And then I feel like it's really hard to make headway with that person, right? If they're not
Mhm.
able to self-reflect and hear you and be able to empathize with really where you're coming from instead of thinking about how it impacts them. So I think to be good in life or more successful, you need to have a coach or a therapist or someone that makes you look inward and dig deep, I think.
Yes, that's right. That's right. Insight and self-awareness is the precursor to any authentic growth or change, like true, true progress. You have to have the insight. You have to have the self-awareness, and that's the self-reflective piece. Yeah.
So for me, it was when my business first really started growing in the heart of a pandemic, and I just was struggling in so many ways that I really buckled down and decided, like, this is not who I want to be. So I need to get really like in tune with like who am I authentically? What is my authentic self? How do I want to show up to the world? But it took me being in that really, really dark spot to want to figure that out for myself. What was it for you guys that taught you, you know, even when it's so painful, you have to look inward and improve? What parts of your life brought that up for you?
Hmm.
Hmm. That's a really good question, but I want to say, Jess, that's so commendable that you were able and willing to go there. And it's a lot of times it's during those trials and it's during those seasons of challenge and
Mhm.
when we're uncomfortable,
Mhm.
that's when we can grow. It's
Yeah.
easy when things are easy. It's easy when things are going well. It's when things are challenging.
Yeah.
That's when we have a window of opportunity to grow.
I
I mean, I've gone you back to your question. there have been so many seasons in my life where that's happened. I don't know if I could pinpoint one in particular, but it's almost as though you can also use that as an indicator. So when you're feeling the emotional distress and you're feeling low and you're feeling all those things, right? That's a cue and a clue that you may have a window of opportunity to really grow.
Yes,
So
I agree. I think when you're brought to the table and it's hard, that's when
yeah,
when I talk to my kids and they're scared of something or um we'll just use that as an example. I'll say this is really exciting because we have an opportunity right now to grow the brave part of your brain. We can go there
right,
now.
right.
But I will say, like for me, once I started doing self-reflection, so many parts of my life came into the picture that I wanted
Yeah.
to improve upon. But all those little parts that needed improvement wasn't enough for me. It was feeling at complete rock bottom
Mm,
that made me go like, what the hell is going on? This is not who I want to be. And why the hell do I act like this? So then you start looking,
right.
and that shit's painful.
Yes.
I
Yeah.
just remember sitting there doing meditations at the beginning or journaling and just tears, just unleashed tears that I didn't even know existed.
Right.
So even when you come through, and I feel like I've come through like a lot of the trauma, it's still there, but I've really like
Yeah.
processed a lot of what was traumatic to me. It's still uncomfortable every time you sit down and reflect. So I think anyone that does this work is commendable because it's not fun. It's not easy.
No, it's not easy, and that self-reflection, it can, it involves a lot of things, but one thing it really lends itself to is looking at what is my approach to life. Okay, I'm kind of in a crisis. So, a few months back, my husband was out of work. Long story short, it was like it made me realize how I approached true stress. How do I approach it? What strategies do I use? Do I have strategies? What are they? And then, like you said, it goes way back. Why do I approach life the way
Yeah.
that I do? Right. And then trying
Mhm.
to we can look at, okay, I have these certain maybe patterns or, go-to strategies. Maybe they're not actually healthy or effective. Why are they there? Okay. And then we need to validate that. They're there for a reason, right? I learned to approach life the way that I do because somewhere along the way it was adaptive for me. It was maybe a defense mechanism, something, but
It was
it
how you
helped.
survived. It's how you got.
It's how I survived, right?
Yeah.
But that
Mhm.
self-reflection gives you that chance to look at it and say, okay, maybe the way I'm doing it isn't all that adaptive. Maybe it's not that helpful, and maybe I can make a conscious decision to abandon some of those less adaptive strategies, and learn some more helpful ones.
Yeah. I think it's really important to get to like the why. Why is this happening? Where did I learn this? Instead of like, God, I know I react quickly to people, or I know I do this, I'm gonna stop because I don't like that behavior. But it's like, why?
Yes,
Why do I have that behavior?
yes,
What about
and
you?
then the validating piece, self-validate.
Well,
I'm not
that
a
part's
terrible
really
person.
hard.
It is hard. I'm not a terrible person because I do it this way.
Right,
There's a
right.
reason I did it this way, but I can choose
Got
to
it.
do it different. Right, sorry,
Yeah.
go ahead.
And then making that choice daily, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
For- What about you? You can have definitely had a ride.
There's been some pivotal moments in the past decade,
Yeah.
some very painful ones. What part would you like me to speak on?
Whatever you're comfortable with, leave out whatever you're not comfortable with.
Um, well, I don't know. Can you gear me with like a really specific question?
Okay, so you have left 2 marriages for different reasons, but I would
Mm,
say both times you left, it was because you were valuing your self-worth.
absolutely.
Okay, so but those are still really hard decisions, especially in one of them when you have an infant,
Right.
but you are a strong, like, I know we're having like a very serious, more serious conversation now, but like this is just one side of your all's personality, right? You guys are fun and wild and crazy and
Woo!
Yeah, that side completely exists. So you're also a really strong woman, and instead of staying where it's simpler in a marriage where you either don't feel loved, but you've made the commitment, or you have a
Right.
child with someone. So how disruptive to everybody's life to change that. But I'm so proud of you always, and I know Kara is too, for valuing you and moving on in your life.
You know, you have to, and the irony in it is that, and I know you two could speak to this, is that I have struggled with a lot of insecurity and self-doubt over the years, just part of my personality for whatever reason. But when it comes to the big issues, loving yourself and ultimately for me, being an example to my daughter is paramount.
Yeah.
I come from two sides of generations of strong women. All of them had careers, were working moms at times. So I have that example that just kind of came out in me when it had to.
Yeah.
And I know that there's those moments when you look back. I think about when I moved into my place, when Valentina was just, gosh, she wasn't even two, she was probably 19 months old. And I remember being terrified. I remember those feelings of how am I going to do this? And how am I going to make ends meet every month? You know, my rent was so much money and I had just gotten back into working more and I thought, how am I going to do this? And I look back and I honestly don't know how I did it. I look
Mhm.
back at myself and I'm like, wow, I was actually kind of a badass. I am a badass.
You are. I mean, I was gonna say, like, not only did you do it, but you did it
Yeah.
well. You're so involved
Right.
in our community. You know so many women in business. Know so many men in business. You're a part of so many organizations. You have such a strong name for yourself in the community, all while moving out scared shitless on your own with a baby and doing it on your own. I know you have family support, but that doesn't always come exactly the way you want it to see it. And you did this like on your own and with
I
care
did.
therapy,
Yeah.
therapy.
With Kara as my therapist at my side. Yes. You know, I do have to give credit where credit's due, and I've been blessed with such an amazing support system. That's really at the end of the day, that is what has allowed me to keep going. That and maybe a little bit of Zoloft and red wine from time to time.
Yeah, we can't leave those things
Um,
out.
yeah, but but honestly, I have such an incredible support system with my friends and family, and I'm so blessed, and my daughter's blessed for it.
So would you say that's like one of the key things that you need in your life to do what you do? Like if you were to pick three things that were like nearest and dearest to your heart that you use for self-care or strength
Mhm.
or support, would it be a strong support system?
Yeah, I'd probably put that at number 2. My number 1 would hands down be my relationship with God,
Yeah.
because
Right.
without that, none of this would make any sense. And I've had to draw close to him and knowing that there's a greater purpose in all of this for us, for
That well, and
me.
that there's a reason why you've had your hardships
Yeah.
and there's something better waiting for you.
There is a reason, and I have to take ownership in that too. Kind of back to what Kara was saying, like there are certain things that don't work. Why have I been attracted to certain situations or certain types of people? And that's not to be disparaging towards anyone. It's just, you know, you look at habits and patterns within yourself and realize I'm not a victim here. And I read
Mm.
this incredible book. Her name's Jen. It's called You Are a Badass by
Oh, I love her.
the
Yeah.
Jen Cicero or
Jen
whatever.
Jen Sincero. Yeah.
Yes, I have read that I read by reading, I mean Audible,
Yeah.
3 different times in 2020.
Yeah.
I listened to that book, some chapters over and over again, and one of the things that really stood out to me about that book, which I loved, is when we stop harnessing this idea that we're a victim to our circumstance or a victim to what someone did to us or whatever it may be, it's so empowering. You take ownership in
Mm.
your heart. You say, why did I accept this? Why? And that can be not just relationships, it's anything. It's like, why did I accept less than I deserve?
Because it's so much
Mm.
safer
Mhm.
and more known sometimes, I think,
Mm.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
It feels
Exactly.
familiar.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It feels familiar. And so I've had to actually stop saying to myself, and I did say I'm a single parent. I'm a solo parent, but to say that as an excuse, oh, well, I can't show up for this because I'm a single parent. No, there's millions of single parents and
Mhm.
people do show up where there's a will, there's a way. And we all
Mhm.
have limitations, of course, but I guess that's been one of the big teachable parts of this for me is you have to take ownership and not be a victim to your situation.
I love that. I think that's so important. I think when I lived in the state of being a victim, I complained. I just complained about my circumstances. I was miserable.
Mm.
Um, I put blame on other people for doing things when, I mean, looking back, like they were doing the best they can, right? We're all
Right.
doing in that moment, well, hopefully something that we think is a good choice or a productive choice. And through learning and mistakes, we're able to see when some of those choices weren't good. But instead of blaming others or running um, to greener pastures, if that's someone's mo, it's like be a part of the solution, whether that's leaving or brainstorming or suggesting. Complaining's just complaining, and that's it.
Right.
Nothing's gonna happen.
Right.
But if you're solution
Right.
focused, you
Yeah, and
can
complaining
change
coming from that is yeah, complaining is just such a low vibe. It's really such a low vibe energy. I do it. Trust me,
yeah.
we all do it. But when you can shift it and somehow have those moments where you can have gratitude, like for example, I'm with a wonderful man. I have
Hmm.
gratitude for what's happened and led me up to here because maybe 5 years ago I wouldn't have picked him.
Right.
I would
Mm.
have been too broken or too insecure or whatever it is to like own what it is that I want and go
Hmm.
after that.
Hmm.
So,
Have that
yeah,
self
I think
worth.
exactly. And having gratitude and just honestly being grateful for what you've gone through, even if it's been painful, and be so grateful for that growth and that opportunity.
I
Yeah.
was so scared to turn 40, and now that I'm about to in a few months, I am so excited for my 40s because I feel like my 30s were spent figuring out a
Yeah.
lot, and a lot of
Yeah.
that was really hard and painful. I think you guys can attest to this. There were probably a couple years at the start of the pandemic where I kind of just like fell off the map and
Mm.
I didn't really sustain my relationships or pour energy into them. And looking back, I know, like, I didn't have energetic room for anything or anybody. Like, I would have been the worst vibe because I
Mm.
was in a dark place trying to figure out a lot. And then, while doing that, keeping my business growing and my
Right.
kids okay. And after putting out that energy, I didn't have any. But then to
Yeah.
come back and feel like you've released so much of that and want to be a part of the world again is a much lighter feeling. It's a much nicer
Yeah.
feeling.
We're glad to have you back.
Yes.
It's like you crawl in a cave and
Yeah.
shed what you need to shed and like eventually can, I don't know, come back to life. I don't know. I feel like I just went on a tangent. I don't even know what
No,
got me
there's beauty
started on that.
there's always there's beauty from ashes, and that's part of it is you've gotta see the beauty that's come from it, and I personally, knowing you for the years that I have, gosh, it's been more than half our life,
Mm.
maybe 2/3.
Thanks.
Mm.
40's coming. But
Oh
yeah, no, I see you as like a different evolved, like you're a butterfly that just came out of your cocoon. Your
my gosh.
cocoon
And
was
I
COVID-19.
recently put butterflies on my body because that's what, and
Oh.
then the website I just created, my logo for my business is a butterfly because
I didn't even know
Oh
that.
my gosh. Wow.
butterflies, I'm not wearing my butterfly necklace, but they're so special to me at this stage in my life because I feel like for me and Candace, you know this through high school, but Kara, you lived my life with me.
Mm.
Um, I felt so just small and ashamed and insecure compared to the world for
Mm.
so much of my life that now finally going through these past several years of trying to really learn who I am authentically and coming out just I definitely have a ways to go with confidence, to the degree where I want to be, but I have come through feeling more in my own skin and proud of my accomplishments. And yeah, so to me, it's like that
Yeah,
evolving state of a butterfly. I love them.
right. Transformative.
Transformative.
Yes, I
It's
love that.
on my website. It's like grow, transform, evolve.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
I love it. I think that's the beauty of life. So going into our 40s, I feel like we've figured out, I mean, we've all been through shit in our 30s. I could sit
Right.
here and name a list for every single one of us. And
Right. Yeah,
I feel like learning all that and going to your 40s, I just think it's going to be more fun.
I agree.
I mean, the whole aging process though, doesn't am I the only one that's really freaked out?
No, because I can't even, my injections don't even take anymore. So I'm really freaked out.
Well, yeah, and
Uh,
so I was telling Kara, I was like, the irony in the fact that you're a speech therapist, I was gonna say, luckily it hasn't hit yet, but I was gonna say I don't have a speech impediment. I just got Botox around my mouth on Friday, so.
Oh, I can't even tell, but I'm really sad because I've talked to a few people now and this is like a lot gone injected and look at that. Like, so yeah, I mean, aging scares me in that sense. I mean, on Saturday
Yeah.
night, instead of doing whatever with our kids or going out or just having like a movie night, we were both like deep in it. Both kids had a school project. And that
Mhm.
was like a moment for me where I was like, this is our Saturday night. Like our kids aren't even young.
mm,
We're not even parents of like little ones anymore. Like they're
right.
big and that like life is happening now.
Yeah.
I know.
It really is. It is. Yeah. It's yeah, I had a moment the other night where I was watching the kids kind of just observing, and it just kind of hit me. It was like, this is what's happening. This is now, but it's not always going to be like this.
No,
It's
it
not
like
always going to be like this.
it's
It's
so
going to
cliche. Like the two most cliche things I've ever heard that are the truest things I will ever know is college is the best time of your life. And and I shouldn't say the best. It's the most freeing and fun time of your life. And um when you're a parent, it goes by really fast.
And you're never gonna be hotter than you were in college, that too.
I definitely look better than I did in
Aw.
but that's just me. That
You
college
looked great then, and you look great now.
Back to the self-confidence piece.
Yes,
there you go.
empowerment,
There you go.
empowerment.
So, okay, so what do you guys do when you're not working and you're not momming? What do you do for you?
Hmm, that's a hard question, Jess. Somebody just asked me, "Don't you have any hobbies or this or that?" And I'm like,
You know, a
"My
ton.
hobbies involve." I
I didn't
do,
say
but like
hobby. I do not have a hobby. Self-care is my hobby right now.
self-care is definitely my hobby. I don't
But
have
that's what I mean. What
time.
do you do for you when it's not, Valentina or talking to your clients? What are those things that you fit into your life? Therapy, you do
Therapy,
CrossFit.
I do CrossFit. I recently just joined back in Orange Theory, so I'm trying to, pay attention to my physical health. Those are probably the biggest things. And then obviously the spirituality piece. I try to spend time, if not daily, at least a couple times a week, just in prayer.
You
I
also
did
socialize a lot, like, you're really good at, like, going to
that.
lunches or seeing friends, like
Yeah. I've had to I've kind of had to accept the fact that I am a little bit of a hybrid of an introvert extrovert. And part of my extrovert, I do crave and desire time with other people. Other people
Mm.
bring me so much joy. And so I feel weird saying it, but socializing is probably one of my hobbies.
That's
yeah,
fine. That's fine. Yeah, I mean, same. It's,
age, hobbies, and self-care are kinda, like, synonymous.
I think so too.
well, yes, yes. I mean, we think of a hobby as something like, well, I do
Yes.
crocheting or
Yeah,
whatever.
yeah.
But and I think a lot of it comes down to values, and I talk a lot about values, but it's what we value. So, we value. I'm very similar, very social. I put a lot into my relationships. I've had them for a long time and they're important to me. I value them. So it brings me joy and fulfillment to connect with those people.
Yes.
It's, however, self-care is a big term, but it incorporates a lot of different things. Self-care can be sitting on a patio having a cup of coffee.
That's huge self-care.
Yeah.
Sunshine.
Yep.
Me going on walks alone.
Yeah.
It's an audiobook or a really good podcast.
Right.
Yeah, I think it looks like a lot of those different things. And like, I think for me, I've gone to a point in my life where I need certain things to function the way I function.
Yeah.
Right.
You have to fill your cup.
Yeah, but I think I realize that more and more as I age.
Yeah.
You know what? There's nothing wrong with knowing our limitations, whether it's physical, mental, emotional, just kind of, not to say sometimes you need to push past those things and grow, but I think there's beauty in understanding what our limitations might be.
How do you know when you
Absolutely.
reach a limitation? What does it feel like to you?
For me, I
Yeah.
usually get sick, and that's my body's way of saying, please stop filling your Outlook calendar with multiple activities, including working out, volunteering, or social events every single day. I have to stop. Kara always teases me. She's like, you do a lot.
She
And
does.
so
She does do
I
a
have-
lot.
I have to stop. I have to like harness that energy that's, and I wouldn't even say it's a nervous energy. It's just this like, maybe it's the Italian in me. I don't know. It's like, I just keep going and going and going. And finally my body
That's
stops.
why you feel like you need to be doing all those things.
I don't know. I should probably take that up with my therapist.
Full
I
circle.
used to have a really, really
What
hard
happened in
time.
your earlier years that made you feel like you must be doing all these things? What
Where
does
did you learn that you needed to be
really
on the go?
to? What's that core emotion that you're really working through?
I don't know. I mean, I can tell you in my 30s, in the last decade, I could say I think I feared being alone a lot. And then I forced myself to actually be alone. And then I
Good
was
for
able to
you.
get over that. But I think that was probably part of it is I thought if I wasn't doing something, then I was doing nothing. And that's boring.
Ah, that's a good
Very
point.
in us, I would say, like I can, give myself a certain amount of time and then I get to the point of like, why am I not doing something? I could relate to that. And I don't put volunteering and all those different things on my calendar, but I give so much to my business. And as soon as I would reach one goal, I immediately decide what the next goal was. I never just sat in it. And I will never forget when one of our mutual friends, Perry, we were having coffee, and this was years ago, and it's stayed with me forever. She goes, "Can't you just sit in what you have going on now for like 6 months?" And I thought about it. I was like, I really can't. It's constant, but I really do think that's the Aries just.
Well, and you two are cut from a similar cloth. You guys,
We're
you
born
guys
5 days apart.
and you are both, yeah, you were born 5 days apart. But some of it too is just temperament and personality. You're wired a certain way. You're wired to be kind of, you're both very driven, and that manifests differently for both of you. But sometimes, yes, and sometimes, again, something I explain to clients is sometimes doing nothing is self-care.
It absolutely is like taking a nap. Kara, what did you used to say? What did you used to say about me when we lived together? When you'd turn on a movie, we would turn on a movie.
Oh, she couldn't get through a movie. We'd be 10 minutes in and it was, I'm gonna go wash my hair. I'm gonna go pluck my eyebrow. She couldn't, it was like she had to be doing something. But she's very, it's a strength in the sense that she's very accomplished. You're very accomplished, and
I just can't sit through a what's it called?
A feature-length film. Yeah.
I can only
Jessie,
imagine.
can you?
Can I sit through a movie? Yeah, if it's my kind of movie.
Right, right.
You don't get up and put it on pause or go do laundry or do anything.
No, I probably pause it at least once.
Yeah.
Because I
Okay,
kind of
yeah.
feel like
So
for
I'm
2
so
hours,
different.
I've lost what's going on in the world. Like, what's happening in my house? Like, who needs to be on my phone? Where are the dogs? Yeah. Should I be eating something?
I know. I have a move to play on words with friends. It's always something.
I have Wordle up in front of me so much as I watch TV.
Yeah,
I
definitely.
I think
love
I'm
that game.
constantly, going back to the wires and the boxes, I'm kind of always straddling at least between 2 things. So, that's how I communicate to my husband, and that it just doesn't work. It just doesn't work. So
You
guys
communicate
feel-
through Wordle?
What's
I
a
mean,
five-letter word? What's a five-letter word of what I'm feeling right now?
To
Angry.
each their own. You
wait,
do you.
you missed the part where I said I communicate through 2 different things all the time. I'm never thinking about just one thing. So when I talk to Ben, I present with multiple things.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
As long as it's not multiple personalities.
TikTok. We do their TikToks that imply what we want from the other one.
Is it
That's
dancing
an
involved usually?
interesting, that's an interesting,
Is there dancing involved usually?
No, there's no
It's-
dancing. I
I
might
thought
get
TikTok
one
called
about
dancing.
sexual encounters though. I don't send those.
oh, that's
Oh,
probably a good thing that you don't.
That's not what I need to fill up my right now. It's probably more like the husband cleaning the kitchen.
that's a huge turn on.
I mean,
It really is.
it's we're all in agreement. That is
Or wiping up water splats off the mirror after they brush their teeth or something.
Yes.
Oh,
Yes.
that
it's
gets
those
me.
little things where it's not even the act of them doing it, which is great, but it's knowing they heard me and they're
Yeah.
I said
They care. I matter.
I matter. I feel
Who
seen.
knew?
Feel
Who
heard.
knew?
I
Why
really
did you matter too?
most is to just be seen and heard.
Right.
That's right.
Yeah, but you know what? That's why God gave us girlfriends.
No,
True.
Because I just I'm so solid on that with everything I've been through and we've all been through. And all my, my closest girlfriends, you guys are all in great marriages, relationships. And I think that we've all gotten to a place where we can accept no one person is ever going to fill every need. It just doesn't exist.
Right.
Yeah.
You could be a perfect man, perfect spouse, whatever you want to call it. No one's going to fill that.
Well,
And
no one's
girlfriends,
That's right. That's right. And
girlfriends are
they're very important. I think in a perfect world, you'd have your partner or your significant other, and they would just cross off all the boxes, right? But it's not reality. And so we then have to look outside of the relationship.
Yeah, someone
the
told me this
support.
over the weekend. They're trying really hard to remove the word perfect from their vocabulary when they communicate with themselves or their children, or even responding to a text with perfect, because it's just
Oh.
unattainable.
Right.
And
I
she's
like
just
that.
trying to take it out completely. I thought,
Right.
good one. I like that
Yeah.
too, because
Mhm.
that's an unattainable bar.
Unlearning what we've learned.
Unlearning what we've learned. So,
Mhm.
as we kind of go into wrapping this up, if you were going to give your 3 top things that you feel allow you to be where you are today, or things that you would pass on to other women, what have you done in your life that you feel has been most impactful in your happiness, your families, your career, that to allow you to sustain all of it without completely losing yourself?
Mhm.
Mm.
I can say a couple of things. First and foremost, similar to what Candace said, maintaining and cultivating my relationship with God is huge. Spending time in prayer, giving him the things that I just can't manage sometimes, and literally feeling the peace from him that comes from that process. Second would be leaning on others. Not always my husband that I lean on, Sometimes it is, depending on what the issue is. But again, that goes back to if we're not, people offer different types of support. So depending on, so leaning on friends, close friends, you girls, leaning on family, my sister, my parents, my husband for certain things, depending again. Third, gosh, just taking a breath and remembering that I think the gratitude piece too, of like just keeping in mind all the good that I have, and not to go to like a doomsday, but if you can kind of, not a, well, it could be worse, the perspective taking of it could be worse, but reframing that into focusing on what is good, like what I have,
Do you think
health.
that's one of the main things you've done when your career has felt scary or smaller than you wanted, and you've had that career fear or financial fear, just shifting your perspective?
I think one thing is looking back at times, when things were uncertain or I was, maybe anxious or concerned that it wasn't going to go the way I wanted or that I couldn't succeed, looking back at times in the past when I maybe had those similar feelings and then was able to succeed. Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah. So kind of challenging that negative, core belief or cognitive distortion, if you will, that I can't do it or it's not going to work out. Okay, well, let's look back and think about some times when you felt the same way, you had these same concerns or anxieties, and it did work out and you did succeed.
I love that, and taking that in the list.
You can have that, but you need to quote me.
Okay, you got it. By Kara Rains. What about you, Karen?
I couldn't have said it better than Kara. She's got such great points there. Starting with the faith piece, the support piece, and then going into the self-care. I mean, I think for me, specifically with my career and life in general, is getting to a place where you can accept things are not going to always look the way we think they should have. They're not going to. They're never going to. We can have this perfect idea we all did as little girls. I'm going to marry a guy who's going to provide for me or whatever, and I'm going to have this great career in this perfect family life. You know what? None of that exists in the perfection term. So for me, I think daily just accepting things are not going to always be perfect and look exactly the way we think they should. The way that social media projects things should look. That's not reality.
Yeah. No, I hear you. I think what's so interesting is, for me, I'm not a religious person, as much as you guys turn to religion, but I am a spiritual person. And at the end of it, it's the same exact thing. I call it the universe, you call it God, call it whatever people want to call it. It's having that faith and being able to release and surrender over and trusting that the process is the way it's intended to be. And I don't think I was able to breathe and grow until I started, reading different books. And there's been huge people in my life that I've read their books or followed their programs, like Gabrielle Bernstein or Lacey Phillips, where you're really just learning to trust, unblock things that are triggers and holding you back, and have faith in where it's all going, especially when it's challenging.
Right. Very important.
I couldn't agree more.
Thank you so much for doing this with me and being podcast episode number 2. I couldn't have done it with anybody better than my 2 lifelong friends. So thank you.
Thanks for having us, Jess. It was such an honor. Thank you so much for asking.
It's so fun.
Such an honor and so fun.
I know. We're just missing some. Next time we should do it at 9:30 p.m. so we can have some martinis.
I was just saying the next one should be a podcast when we're all together in the evenings. It'll be a complete podcast.
And you can do one of your beautiful charcuterie boards. That needs to be part of it. We can be eating.
Business is
eating and drinking, and
yeah, those are my hobbies. Those are part of my hobbies.
If we're going to be honest, those are the real hobbies, right?
Yeah. What else is there?
Yeah. Bye. Love you.
Bye. Love you, girls.